All right, ready for another deep dive? Today we're heading to East Asia. You wanted the 2024 update on Denmark and Japan, trading partners, and we got the goods straight from Denmark's statistic.
And it's a good one. We don't always think about these country-to-country relationships, but they're fascinating.
Totally. This isn't just numbers, it's a whole story. And get this, Denmark and Japan traded over 40 billion. Billion with a B. Danish kroner in 2023 alone.
That's serious business. Shows how connected these two economies are, even across the world.
Right. And it makes sense when you see Japan consistently in Denmark's top 15 trading partners. Not the first pairing you'd think of, but the data says different. Now, 2023 did see a bit of a dip. Overall trade went down slightly.
Yeah, and that always makes everyone nervous.
Yeah.
Right? But we got to remember the bigger picture, global slowdown, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're digging deeper. That's where the good stuff is, the specifics.
Love it when we get specific. So what's Denmark sending to Japan? Pharmaceuticals, that's the big one. Over 5 billion kroner worth in 2023.
Denmark, they're really leading in that pharmaceutical game. And it's not just about the money. Think about the impact. This is medicine helping people globally.
It's kind of wild when you think about it that way, huh? But hey, it's not all about the meds. Meat, chemicals, those are big exports too, though not quite on the pharmaceutical level, obviously. But get this, early 2024 data shows Danish exports to Japan, they're actually down. What do you think? Blip or trend?
Too soon to tell for sure. But this is where things get really interesting. We got to consider, well, everything. That global slowdown we talked about, lingering effects, supply chain still messed up, geopolitics, always a factor. It's like a puzzle. Need all the pieces.
Totally. International trade, it's a wild ride. Okay, so that's Denmark sending stuff, but what about Japan sending stuff to Denmark?
Okay, think about it this way. Ever driven a Japanese car?
Who doesn't, right?
Exactly. Vehicles, that's a huge chunk of what Japan sends over. Over 600 million kroners worth, just in 2023.
Makes sense. But here's something I found interesting. Remember how we said Danish exports to Japan were down? Well, imports from Japan, those actually went up significantly between 2019 and 2023. Even with that little dip recently, exports down, imports up. What's the story there?
Right. It's a good contrast. Tells us a lot about how the Danish and Japanese economies, how they actually work. Denmark, they're more export-focused, those pharmaceuticals, food production, that's their jam. Japan, they're manufacturing giants, supplying the world, and hey, that includes Denmark.
So it's like less about just trading back and forth, more like their economies fit together, yeah.
Exactly. Like puzzle pieces, but on a global scale.
And speaking of fitting together, this blew my mind. Over 100, you heard that right, over 100 Danish companies have subsidiaries operating in Japan, employing over 6,500 people.
Yep. And this is where it gets really cool. We're not just talking products moving around anymore. This is deep economic ties. Those subsidiaries, that's Danish knowledge, expertise, right there in the Japanese market.
It's like setting up shop right in the heart of Japan's business world. And get this, Japanese investment in Denmark. Double what Denmark invests in Japan. What's that about?
Foreign investment, always complicated. But basically, it usually means someone's really confident in how the other country's economy is doing. Japan sees something in Denmark, maybe it's renewable energy, tech startups, who knows. But they're putting their money where their mouth is.
So it's not just selling each other stuff, it's more like sharing knowledge, building something together.
Exactly. A real partnership, long-term, not just a quick deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's like Japan is saying, hey, we believe in you, Denmark, and backing it up,
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Huge. Shows real trust, between these two. But here's something I was thinking about. We've been talking big picture, right? All this economic stuff. Exports, imports, investments. But it's people, right? At the end of the day.
100%. Trade isn't just numbers on a screen, it's connections. People, entrepreneurs, entire workforces even. Remember all those Danish subsidiaries, the ones in Japan?
Yeah.
That's over 6,500 people. That's collaboration, innovation, even some cultural exchange going on. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know me, I got to bring it back to the people. So I was wondering, what are these companies? Like, what are they actually doing over there? Are they building factories, tech offices? What? I wish the report had gone deeper there.
Yeah, I hear you. We don't have all the specifics here, but we can guess, right? Denmark's got that renewable energy thing going on, life sciences, maritime tech. Probably making waves in those sectors over in Japan, I bet. And don't forget design. Danish design is huge. They must be bringing that to Japan, too.
Good point.
Yeah.
Easy to forget about that side of it with all the numbers, but culture, that's part of it, too. Speaking of going deeper, this report, it's all about right now, 2023, 2024. But I'm always curious about the history, you know?
No, absolutely. History, it gives you the why,
Mm.
Like they say, the past is prologue or something like that.
Right. So, like, have Denmark and Japan, have they always been this tight? Was there growth? Were there, like, bumps in the road? I'd love to see that timeline.
Totally. Don't have all that data in front of us right now, but I can tell you this. Trade, it's never just stayed the same.
Mm.
It changes with the world, technology, politics even. Pandemics, dare I say it.
Oh, don't get me started on pandemics and supply chains. That's a whole other deep dive. But you're
Yeah.
right, always changing. And that makes me think we've been focusing on the good stuff, and there's a lot, but you gotta look at both sides, right? Are there any challenges, any friction points between Denmark and Japan trade-wise?
Oh, for sure. Good point. Can't
Of
just look at the good
course.
stuff, right? Got to be realistic.
Right?
I mean, Denmark and Japan, they seem to be doing great. But any relationship, especially between countries, it's going to have some bumps.
Like what
Yeah.
what kind of things could cause issues?
Regulations, for one. What flies in Denmark might not in Japan, and vice versa. Danish companies over there, they got to adapt, not just to the rules, but the culture, how business is done. It's tricky. And then there's those geopolitical factors we talked about, always lurking in the background, right?
Yeah.
World's getting more connected, but
Yeah.
also less predictable. Businesses, policymakers, they got to be ready for anything.
I'm walking a tightrope almost,
Hmm.
right? Got to stay balanced. But
Yeah.
that's what makes this stuff so interesting, complex, always changing, keeps you on your toes.
Totally. And hey, it's great to see someone as into this as you are, passionate about it.
Well, you know me, always up for a deep dive. But we could talk about this all day, right? and still only be scratching the surface. So much more to explore.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We really dug deep today, huh? Learned a ton about Denmark and Japan, all their trading secrets.
We did. It's amazing what you can find in just one report, when you really start looking.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We give everyone a front row seat to this stuff, international economics, but in a way that's actually interesting.
Makes you think. Hopefully gets people wanting to learn more on their own even.
Exactly. And we just scratched the surface here. Think about it. We could do a whole deep dive on just the history of Denmark and Japan trading, like going way back, Edo period, the early days.
Right. Or we could pick one thing like renewable energy or those life sciences collaborations. Really get into the weeds.
So many options. But gotta wrap it up sometime, right? Before we do, though, always gotta leave everyone with something to think about. We covered a lot, right? Trade numbers, those Danish pharmaceuticals, Japanese cars everywhere, those Danish companies operating in Japan. It's a lot.
It is.
Mhm.
Shows you how much goes on behind the scenes. It's a whole relationship, not just buying and selling.
Okay, so here's the big question for everyone listening. Thinking about everything we talked about today, what do you think? What's the future for Denmark and Japan trade-wise? Will it keep growing, get even closer? What about new opportunities, anything hidden there? And the most important part, how does this affect you? Here in Denmark, at work, everyday life, does it matter? Something to chew on, right?
You got it. Sometimes asking the right questions, that's more important than having all the answers.
Well said. And on that note, time to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, Denmark and Japan, trade, all that good stuff. We'll catch you next time.